The Brown County Historical Commission and Brownwood's Lyric Theater, in cooperation with the Brown County Museum of History and the R.B. Rogers House and Events Venue, present Bygone Brown. Episode 2, The Spoils of War. In downtown Brownwood, large green street signs now distinguish one road from another. Those signs mark more than just the handful of short roads that intersect the city's historic district. As much as they indicate any direction, they guide us to its past. The names on those signs belonged to men whose lives spent in Brown County earned them the approbation of a grateful city. One of those streets runs an undulating course from the east side through the main campus of Howard Payne University, crossing Austin Avenue from where it runs straight to the historic Brownwood Hotel, before bending again and wending its way past buildings that have overlooked it since before it was paved, continuing past the 1917 courthouse before merging with Main Street, then becoming lost in the intersection that now stands where the traffic circle once served as a graceful entrance to the city. That long and winding road, of course, is Fisk Street, named for Greenleaf Fisk, considered the father of Brownwood, who as a veteran of the Revolution and the Republic earned his designation by earning the land where the city now sits, literally, as the spoils of war.
Mexicanas, mexicanos, viva la independencia. ¡Viva! ¡Viva Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla! ¡Viva! ¡Viva México!
Annually, Mexico celebrates Decisive de Septiembre, the 16th of September, the date on which a Catholic priest named Miguel Hidalgo rang his church bell in a small town called Dolores in the Mexican state of Guanajuato, initiating the long Mexican War of Independence from Spain. Once freedom finally came in 1821, only about 3,500 settlers lived in what is now Texas, and most of them resided in or near San Antonio, the administrative capital. To encourage more, the Mexican government enacted the General Colonization Law in 1824, and its constitution of the same year declared Mexico to be a federal republic and formally manumitted the slaves on Mexican territory. But the majority of U.S. citizens settling in Texas came from slave states, so to discourage the further expansion of slavery, and suspicious that the United States wanted to annex Texas, the Mexican government prohibited further immigration by U.S. citizens into its territory after 1830. Anglo settlers objected, and in a convention held in 1832, they demanded that Tejas be administered separately. When the Mexican government rejected their demand, it began a crisis that turned violent on October 2, 1835, with the Battle of Gonzales, the birthplace of that flag, with its silhouette of a black cannon on a white ground emblazoned with the legend, "Come and take it." That would become a universal symbol of defiance. The Texas Revolution had begun. Only 1 year before Gonzales, Greenleaf Fisk had moved to the small community of Mina outside present-day Bastrop. Born in 1807 in New York, the then 27-year-old Fisk had studied theology before moving to Texas. But after Gonzales, he found himself swept up in earthly affairs and so joined a company of Bastrop County volunteers. On March 1, 1836, a group of 60 delegates met in Washington on the Brazos. A majority of them had moved to Texas after the law of 1830 prohibiting further migration from the United States, making them illegal immigrants. and 2/3 of them were less than 40 years of age. They selected a 5-man committee to write their statement of principles, borrowing heavily from the American Declaration of Independence, proclaimed Texas an independent republic, and voted to raise an army under the command of 43-year-old Sam Houston. The response from the Mexican government to these provocations was swift and brutal. The Mexican president and General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna's troops slaughtered the defenders of the Alamo on March 6th, and on March 27th, they executed an additional 450 Texians in what came to be known as the Goliad Massacre, after the town whose name was an anagram for the father of Mexican independence, Father Hidalgo. Hoping to terrify the surviving settlers into submission, the Mexicans burned the bodies of the soldiers they murdered at Goliad and left them exposed to vultures and coyotes, a desecration of the war dead that contributed to the evacuation of settlers, known as the Runaway Scrape. Assisting those who escaped the advancing Mexican army was Greenleaf Fisk. Before the massacre, Fisk had been serving under Edward Burleson, guarding Harrisburg at the mouth of the San Jacinto River, a critical supply port for Houston's ragtag army. At the time, in New Washington, just outside Harrisburg, an ill-timed experiment in local development was struggling. The short-lived settlement of New Washington had been the brainchild of James Morgan, and with the aid of New York investors, he meant to build a town overlooking the San Jacinto River at the head of Galveston Bay. With Morgan as their agent, the investors bought 2 small schooners to transport supplies, and they recruited a staff of 13 laborers from the East Coast. One of those staffers was a free black woman of mixed race and striking beauty named Emily West.
Next. What's wrong?
I don't know, Mr. Morgan.
Well, then maybe you should ask your mama. You look too young to be traveling anyway.
I ain't got no mama, no daddy neither. I'll be making my own decisions.
Then you need to decide now. Can't keep the others waiting.
And this is all you're paying, Mr. Morgan?
All? Well, I'd say we're being awful generous. There's not another employer in Tejas that's willing to pay $100 for a housekeeper. $100 for a whole year.
Emily signed up and set sail from New York City, arriving in Texas in December of 1835, just 2 months after Gonzales, when settlers' relations with Mexico had turned violent. The next 5 months in Emily's life were excessively dramatic, as the rebels made their headquarters at Harrisburg and the Texian army seized positions along the Gulf Coast. But when the Mexicans tried to crush the revolt at Goliad and the Alamo, Sam Houston realized that his ill-trained and ill-equipped force was not ready to confront the better supplied and disciplined Mexican army. So he withdrew his company of volunteers north of Harrisburg to a spot along the San Jacinto River. His tactical withdrawal caused many under his command to question his leadership and wonder if he had the stomach for a fight. One of them, doubting Houston's resolve, was the interim president of the provisional government, David G. Burnett, who sent his Secretary of War, Thomas Rusk, to relieve the general.
I'm telling you, Sam, Burnett's concerned.
And I'm telling you, Tom, I'm not.
He said he didn't want you retreating any further.
I'm not retreating. I'm holding back.
You can't.
We're not ready.
They're laughing at you.
Let 'em.
The enemy, I mean, but some of the men, too.
Then you tell them men, if any of 'em even thinks about replacing me as general, I'll have him court-martialed and shot. I won't have me another Alamo or Goliad on my hands.
But it's on account of Goliad and Alamo that Burnett expects you. Hell, the country expects you to fight. And the country depends on you doing so.
By the time of Houston's retreat, Santa Anna had turned his ruthless attention to the Texian capital in Harrisburg. James Morgan was not there when the Mexicans attacked on April 16th. The Texians had commandeered Morgan's schooners and were using them to supply Houston's volunteers. while Morgan himself had been given command of Fort Travis in Galveston. His absence meant the staff he had employed to work for him were left defenseless and at the mercy of the invading Mexican army. Pleased at the success of his all-out strategy, General Santa Anna allowed his troops to pillage everything they could steal. For 3 days, the Mexicans looted Morgan's stores and wrecked the town, but from the mayhem, the general himself only took one thing that struck his fancy.
¿Qué vamos a tomar, señor presidente? Todos pueden tomar lo que quieren, pero la chica es mía.
No! No! I won't go with you! No!
Informed that Houston's army was encamped only 10 miles away on Buffalo Bayou, Santa Anna knew he had the Texians cut off from additional reinforcements and supplies. As he left New Washington, he marched his men to the bayou, expecting to end the rebellion once and for all. And his unwilling companion on this final approach was Emily West. The 935 men under Houston's command hid in an area protected by trees and tall grass, so that when Santa Anna and his 750 men camped within a mile of Houston on April 20th, the Mexican general could not see them. He only suspected the whereabouts of his rebellious enemies. He sent a probe that elicited a furious response from the 2 cannons that had been manufactured in Cincinnati, donated to the Texian cause, and delivered to New Washington on James Morgan's former schooner, from where they were transported by cart through the mud to San Jacinto and christened the Twin Sisters. Houston was furious that his 2nd Regiment had charged the Mexicans in direct violation of his orders not to engage.
These Hotspurs have more zeal than discretion, and one more breach of discipline like that, and we'll be leaving our bones in this bog, and with it, the cause of independence.
While Houston seethed, Santa Anna plotted. The welcome he received from the Twin Sisters convinced him he was outnumbered, so the Mexican general pressed his men to work through the night of April 20th, building defenses and preparing for reinforcements. When they arrived the next morning, his troop strength had reached about 1,250, almost all of whom were exhausted, either from working on the battlements or marching through the night. When they were not attacked as Santa Anna had anticipated, the Mexican army let its guard down, made complacent by another of Houston's tactical pauses. What happened next remains a matter of dispute. According to legend, Houston learned that his Mexican counterpart intended to relax on the afternoon of the 21st. Like his own exhausted men, Santa Anna wanted a siesta, but unlike them, he had no intention of relaxing on his own. Seizing the opportunity, Houston mustered his troops.
We view ourselves on the eve of battle. We are nerved for the contest, and must conquer or perish. It is vain to look for present aid. None is at hand. We must now act or abandon all hope. Be men, free men, that your children may bless their father's name.
At 4:30 in the afternoon, while the Mexican army rested, the Twin Sisters announced the final battle of the war. The Battle of San Jacinto lasted only 18 minutes as the Texian force roused the Mexican general from his bed and routed his leaderless fighters. During the fighting, Houston took a bullet in his leg, rendering him unable to walk or even stand when he received the surrender of General Santa Anna, the President of the Republic of Mexico, who had literally been caught with his pants down. Houston, of course, would go on to be the first president of the Republic of Texas, and that republic, grateful for the service of its volunteer army, but without the means to pay them, compensated them with the only thing the new country possessed in abundance: land. Greenleaf Fisk received his first land grant, a military headright, as a veteran of San Jacinto. He would receive his next after his years of service to the Republic and his time back in arms during the Mexican-American War, receiving a grant of 12,460 acres of the Marcus Hullen Survey in Brown County. He settled here in 1860, constructing a home that still stands behind the city's Coliseum, and eventually donated the land for the county courthouse and the city cemetery out of his grant. But what of Emily West? She evidently returned to the East Coast after the war. But while she left the state, she left an indelible impression in song. In 1858, the same year as Brownwood was formally organized by the state legislature, Christie's Minstrels, a group of folk musicians who popularized the songs of Stephen Foster, among others, published a melody whose original lyrics praised:
A yellow girl in Texas that I'm gonna see. No other darky know her. No darky, only me. She's the sweetest rose of color this darky ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds. They sparkle like the dew.
Those lyrics would be changed multiple times over the next 100 years. Confederate soldiers turned it into a march, cowboy singer Gene Autry turned it into a country standard, and in 1955, Mitch Miller made a version so popular that it toppled the then #1 song in the nation, Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, and it held the top spot for the next 6 weeks. Its popularity made the song into the Lone Star State's unofficial anthem. By then, however, all references to Emily West had been scrubbed away. The girl whose light brown skin bore yellow undertones and whose beauty was comparable to a rose, who may have distracted a general, contributing to the victory of the Texian army at the Battle of San Jacinto, was at risk of becoming lost. But Emily's story, like that of Greenleaf Fisk, shows how little of what we take for granted is inevitable. While there might have been a town eventually along the banks of the Bygone Bayou, and the streets of that town predictably would have followed the bends in the river, it likely would not have been this town. There would not have been a courthouse where its courthouse now stands, and one of its streets would certainly never have been called Fisk, or its city cemetery called Greenleaf. In fact, within our rich historical inheritance, there probably would have been no Brownwood as we know it, and possibly not even a Texas, if there had not been a San Jacinto. And there would not have been a San Jacinto without a Sam Houston, or a Yellow Rose without the legendary Emily West. For while none of us may have fought alongside the heroes and heroines of the Texas Revolution, we today are the beneficiaries of the estate they left behind, the posterity to whom the blessings of liberty they bequeathed, the real victors to whom belong the spoils.
There's a yellow rose in Texas that I am gonna see. Nobody else could miss her.
Bygone Brown is a co-production of the Brown County Historical Commission and Brownwood's Historic Lyric Theater. A beautifully illustrated companion guide to the series is available at Intermission Books and other locations downtown. Proceeds from the sale of the book support the Brown County Museum of History. Recorded at the elegant R.B. Rogers House and Events venue, Bygone Brown was written by Lamar Cravens, narrated by Tommy Bailey, and featured the voice talents of Dominique Glaske, Jonathan Harvey, Levi Packer, Val Nelson, Drex Holt, Jacob Bierman, Alexander Glass, Walker Willie, Graham Allen, Susie Harkey, Tracy Brandon Tucker, Allison Diaz, Aaliyah Curtis, Mackenzie Lair, Ryan Bailey, and Doug, Shannon, and Aaron Turner. To find out more about our thriving community and upcoming events, go to visitbrownwood.com.